More than 250 million years ago, long before the first dinosaurs appeared, Earth was already home to a world filled with strange reptiles, powerful hunters, and life forms unlike anything alive today. Giant sail-backed animals crossed dry lands, huge amphibians ruled rivers and swamps, and early reptile relatives slowly spread across vast landscapes. The continents were joined together, the climate changed again and again, and nature was constantly shaping new kinds of life. Many of these creatures disappeared before dinosaurs ever walked the planet, but their fossils still tell an amazing story. Earth before the dinosaurs was a world that looked very different from the one people know today. The land, the seas, the air, and the living things were all unlike the modern world. There were no dinosaurs walking across wide plains, no birds flying through forests, and no flowering plants covering hills and valleys. The Earth was already very old, and it had passed through many long periods of change before the first dinosaurs appeared. During these early times, the planet experienced the formation of continents, the opening and closing of oceans, powerful volcanic eruptions, changing climates, and the rise and disappearance of many different forms of life. Scientists continue to study rocks, fossils, and ancient chemical clues to understand this distant past, and every new discovery helps improve what is known about these early ages. The Earth formed about 4.5 billion years ago from clouds of dust and gas that surrounded the young sun. Small pieces of rock and metal slowly came together because of gravity. These pieces collided over and over again until they formed larger bodies. As these bodies grew, they crashed into one another with tremendous force. The young Earth became larger with every major collision. The heat produced by these impacts, along with heat from radioactive materials deep inside the planet, kept much of the Earth extremely hot. Large parts of the surface were covered with melted rock. During this early period, the planet was not a peaceful place. Huge impacts happened often, and volcanic activity was widespread. As the Earth slowly cooled, heavier materials such as iron and nickel sank toward the center of the planet. Lighter materials remained closer to the surface. This process formed the Earth's core, mantle, and crust. The crust slowly became solid enough to support the first stable land. Even then, the crust was not completely fixed. It continued to crack, move, and reshape itself because of the slow movement of the hot mantle beneath it. This movement continues today and is responsible for earthquakes, volcanoes, and the shifting of continents. The early atmosphere also looked very different from the air people breathe today. There was almost no free oxygen. Instead, the atmosphere contained large amounts of carbon dioxide, water vapor, methane, ammonia, nitrogen, and other gases released by volcanic eruptions. The sky may have looked hazy because of dust, volcanic ash, and thick clouds. Rain fell for long periods as water vapor cooled and condensed. These rains helped fill low areas with water, creating the first oceans over a very long time. The oceans became one of the most important places in Earth's history because they provided the environment where the earliest known life developed. Scientists believe that life began in the oceans more than 3.5 billion years ago. These first living things were tiny, single-celled organisms. They had no bones, shells, or other hard parts, so very little direct fossil evidence remains from these earliest forms of life. Some of the best evidence comes from layered rock structures called stromatolites, which were built by groups of microorganisms living in shallow water. These tiny organisms slowly changed the planet. Some developed the ability to produce food using sunlight through photosynthesis. During this process, They released oxygen into the water and eventually into the atmosphere. At first, this oxygen reacted with iron and other materials, instead of building up in the air. After millions upon millions of years, enough oxygen accumulated to change the atmosphere. This event, often called the Great Oxygenation Event, transformed conditions across the planet. Many early organisms that could not survive in the presence of oxygen disappeared, while others adapted and continued to evolve. As oxygen levels increased, life became more complex. Single-celled organisms slowly gave rise to larger and more organized forms of life. Cells learned to work together, forming simple, multicellular organisms. This process took an enormous amount of time. Evolution did not happen quickly. Tiny changes accumulated across countless generations. Organisms that were better suited to their surroundings survived and passed their characteristics to future generations. Long before dinosaurs appeared, the seas became home to a wide variety of life. Soft-bodied animals lived on the ocean floor. Jellyfish-like creatures drifted through the water. Worm-like animals moved through mud and sand. Strange early organisms with unusual body shapes lived in shallow seas. Many of these forms are known from fossils, found in rocks dating back hundreds of millions of years. One of the most important periods in the history of life occurred during what scientists call the Cambrian period. During this time, many groups of animals appeared in the fossil record over a relatively short span of geological time. Animals developed hard shells, protective coverings, and stronger body structures. These hard parts preserved well as fossils, giving scientists much more information about ancient life than was available from earlier periods. The Cambrian seas were filled with strange creatures. Trilobites became some of the most successful animals of this time. They crawled across the seafloor in huge numbers and occupied many different environments. Some species were only a few centimeters long, while others grew much larger. They fed in different ways, depending on their surroundings. Some searched for food in mud, while others hunted smaller animals or collected organic material from the seafloor. Other Cambrian animals included early relatives of modern arthropods, primitive mollusks, sponges, and many soft-bodied creatures with body plans that later disappeared completely. Some animals developed sharp mouthparts and became active predators. Others evolved stronger shells to protect themselves. This period saw increasing interaction between hunters and prey, leading to the development of many new survival strategies. As geological time continued, marine life became even more diverse. Coral-like organisms built reefs. Brachiopods covered large parts of the seafloor. Early cephalopods appeared with long shells that helped them move through the water. Crinoids anchored themselves to the seabed while filtering food from ocean currents. Countless species lived together in ancient marine ecosystems. Fish eventually appeared in these oceans. The earliest fish had no jaws. Their bodies were protected by hard plates, and they fed by filtering small particles from the water. Later, jawed fish evolved, opening many new opportunities for feeding. Jaws allowed animals to capture larger prey, bite through tough material, and explore different food sources. Fish became increasingly successful and spread throughout ancient seas. Some fish developed stronger fins, supported by sturdy bones. These fins later became important in one of the greatest changes in Earth's history. Certain fish began living in shallow waters, where changing water levels sometimes left pools isolated from larger bodies of water. Strong fins helped them move through muddy environments. Over many millions of years, these structures slowly changed into limbs capable of supporting weight on land. The movement of life from water onto land did not happen suddenly. It involved countless small changes across many generations. Early plants first established themselves along damp shorelines. Simple moss-like plants spread across wet surfaces where enough moisture was available. They reproduced using spores rather than seeds. Since they depended heavily on water, they remained close to moist environments. Over time, plants developed stronger stems that allowed them to grow taller. They evolved tissues capable of transporting water and nutrients throughout their bodies. Roots became better at anchoring plants in the ground and absorbing water. Leaves increased the ability to capture sunlight. These developments allowed plants to spread farther from permanent water sources. As plants expanded across the land, they changed Earth's surface. Their roots broke apart rocks, helping create soil. Dead plant material accumulated and mixed with weathered rock to produce richer ground capable of supporting more vegetation. Larger plant communities developed, creating habitats for many other living things. The first animals to live permanently on land were small invertebrates. Early relatives of insects, spiders, centipedes and millipedes moved among simple plants and moist ground. These animals found food, shelter and places to reproduce away from the crowded seas. Their success encouraged further expansion of life onto land. Eventually, early amphibians evolved from fish with strong fins. These animals could breathe air and move across land, although they still depended on water for reproduction. Their eggs lacked protective shells and dried out easily if left away from water. Amphibians often returned to ponds, rivers or wetlands to lay their eggs. Life on land continued to become more complex. Forests spread across many regions of the Earth during the Carboniferous period. Vast areas were covered by giant club mosses, horsetails, ferns and seed ferns. Some plants reached heights much greater than earlier land vegetation. Thick forests trapped enormous amounts of carbon within their tissues. When these plants died, many were buried beneath mud and water before completely decaying. Over immense spans of time, pressure and heat transformed much of this plant material into coal. The atmosphere during parts of the Carboniferous contained higher oxygen levels than today. This allowed some animals, especially certain insects and other invertebrates, to grow much larger than many of their modern relatives. Giant, dragonfly-like insects flew above wetlands. Large millipede relatives crawled across forest floors. These creatures formed part of rich ecosystems filled with many different organisms. Amphibians became more varied as forests expanded. Some hunted insects while others preyed upon fish or smaller amphibians. Different body shapes allowed them to occupy different environments. Even with these advances, they remained closely connected to water because of their reproductive needs. A major change occurred when the earliest reptiles evolved. Unlike amphibians, reptiles developed eggs surrounded by protective membranes and shells. These eggs reduced dependence on water because they could survive on land without drying out quickly. This adaptation opened many new habitats. Reptiles could move farther from lakes and rivers and establish populations in drier environments. The first reptiles were generally small animals. They fed on insects and other small prey. Over time, reptile groups became increasingly diverse. Some remained small while others evolved into much larger animals. Different groups adapted to forests, dry regions, coastal areas, and other habitats. The continents during these ancient times were constantly moving. Plate tectonics slowly carried enormous landmasses across the surface of the Earth. Continents sometimes collided to form mountains. At other times they separated, creating new ocean basins. These movements changed coastlines, climates, and habitats over millions of years. Eventually, most of Earth's land became joined together into one enormous supercontinent, known today as Pangaea. This giant landmass stretched across a vast portion of the planet. A huge ocean surrounded much of it. This giant landmass stretched across a vast portion of the planet. A huge ocean surrounded much of it. The interior of Pangaea was far from the cooling influence of the sea, making many inland areas dry and seasonal. Some regions experienced long periods without significant rainfall. Mountain ranges formed where continents collided. These mountains influenced rainfall patterns and temperatures. Rivers carried sediments into lowlands, forming floodplains where many plants and animals lived. Wind-shaped deserts in dry regions, while coastal areas supported different kinds of ecosystems. The climate before the dinosaurs was not always the same. Earth passed through warm periods as well as ice ages. During colder times, glaciers spread across large areas. Sea levels fell as water became locked within ice sheets. During warmer periods, glaciers melted and sea levels rose again. These changes affected habitats around the world. Volcanic activity played a major role in shaping the environment. Volcanoes released lava, ash, and gases into the atmosphere. Large eruptions sometimes covered huge regions with volcanic rock. Gases released during eruptions influenced the climate by changing the atmosphere over long periods. Volcanic activity also created new land and enriched soils with minerals after weathering occurred. Earthquakes frequently accompanied the movement of tectonic plates. Cracks opened in the crust, allowing magma to reach the surface. Entire landscapes slowly changed as mountains rose and valleys formed. Rivers altered their courses, lakes appeared and disappeared, and coastlines shifted. The oceans also changed through time. Their chemistry evolved as rivers carried dissolved minerals from the continents. Marine ecosystems responded to changing temperatures, sea levels, and nutrient supplies. New habitats developed while others disappeared. Throughout Earth's history before dinosaurs, life experienced several major extinction events. These were times when many species disappeared over relatively short geological periods. Extinctions resulted from different causes, including climate change, volcanic activity, falling sea levels, rising sea levels, changes in ocean chemistry, and other environmental disturbances. After each extinction, surviving groups continued evolving and new species gradually appeared. One important extinction happened near the end of the Ordovician period. Many marine animals disappeared as climate conditions changed and glaciers expanded. Sea levels dropped significantly, reducing shallow marine habitats where numerous species lived. Later, melting glaciers caused additional environmental changes that affected ocean life. Another extinction occurred toward the end of the Devonian period. Reef-building organisms suffered major losses, and many marine species disappeared. Scientists continue studying the exact causes, which may have included changing climates, reduced oxygen levels in oceans, volcanic activity, and other interacting factors. Despite these losses, life continued evolving. Forests became larger and more widespread. Seed-producing plants expanded into new environments. Animals adapted to different climates and food sources. Evolution never stopped, although its pace varied across different groups. The Permian period represented the last chapter before dinosaurs appeared. During this time, reptiles became increasingly successful. Several major reptile groups evolved, including forms that would eventually give rise to later lineages. Some developed powerful legs positioned more directly beneath their bodies, allowing more efficient movement than the sprawling posture of many earlier reptiles. Among the most successful animals of the Permian were synapsids. Although many people casually call them reptiles because they lived before dinosaurs, synapsids belong to a separate evolutionary branch that later gave rise to mammals. They displayed many body forms. Some had large bodies and strong jaws, while others remained relatively small. One famous synapsid was Dimetrodon. Although often mistaken for a dinosaur, it lived millions of years before the first true dinosaurs evolved. Dimetrodon possessed a large sail supported by long bones extending from its back. Scientists continue studying the exact purpose of this structure. Different ideas include body temperature regulation, display, or species recognition. Another important group included herbivorous synapsids that fed on the abundant vegetation growing across the Permian landscape. These animals played major roles in food chains. Large predators hunted them, while smaller animals depended on plants, insects, and decaying organic material. The Permian world contained deserts, floodplains, forests, seasonal rivers, lakes, and coastal environments. Plant life included conifers, seed ferns, ginkgos, cycads, and many other early seed-producing plants. Flowering plants had not yet evolved. Forests therefore looked very different from modern woodlands. The insects living during this time also displayed considerable diversity. Beetle ancestors, cockroach relatives, dragonfly relatives, and many other groups occupied different ecological roles. Insects pollinated nothing because flowering plants did not yet exist, but they fed on leaves, spores, wood, fungi, and other available resources. Small vertebrates hunted insects among fallen leaves and vegetation. Larger carnivores searched for amphibians, reptiles, and synapsids. Rivers supported fish adapted to freshwater environments. Swamps contained numerous aquatic animals, while dry regions favored species capable of conserving water. The skies before dinosaurs lacked birds because birds would not evolve until much later. Flying insects dominated the air. The sounds heard across ancient landscapes came from insects, amphibians, reptiles, flowing water, wind, and volcanic activity rather than birdsong. Nighttime looked different as well. Without modern cities, artificial lights, or human activity, the stars filled the sky with exceptional brightness whenever clouds did not cover them. The moon followed its regular cycles, influencing tides just as it does today. Many animals were active during darkness, taking advantage of cooler temperatures or avoiding daytime predators. The weather across the supercontinent varied greatly from one region to another. Coastal areas received more moisture, while inland deserts experienced dry conditions. Seasonal rainfall influenced plant growth and animal behavior. Rivers sometimes flooded large areas before shrinking again during drier periods. Wind carried dust across open landscapes. Sand dunes shifted slowly under changing weather conditions. Rainstorms carved valleys into softer rock. Rivers transported sediments over great distances before depositing them in lakes, floodplains, and shallow seas. These sediments eventually hardened into rock layers that preserve fossils studied today. Fossils provide one of the most valuable sources of information about life before dinosaurs. Bones, teeth, footprints, burrows, eggs, pollen, leaves, spores, and even tiny chemical traces help scientists reconstruct ancient environments. Fossil discoveries often reveal species that were previously unknown. Sometimes they also change ideas about how different groups evolved. Geologists study rock layers to determine the order in which events happened. Younger rocks usually form above older rocks, unless later geological activity changes their arrangement. Radiometric dating allows scientists to estimate the ages of rocks using the natural decay of radioactive elements. Combined with fossil evidence, these methods create a timeline covering Earth's long history before dinosaurs. Ancient river channels preserved footprints left by animals walking across soft mud. Some tracks reveal herds moving together. Others show predators following prey. Burrows indicate where animals sheltered underground. Fossilized raindrop impressions, ripple marks, and mud cracks provide clues about weather and water conditions long ago. Chemical evidence preserved within rocks also reveals valuable information. Ratios of different forms of oxygen help estimate ancient temperatures. Carbon preserved in rocks records changes in biological activity. Mineral deposits indicate whether environments were freshwater, saltwater, dry land, or volcanic regions. Scientists continue debating many details about Earth's distant past. New fossil discoveries sometimes require earlier ideas to be revised. Better technology allows researchers to study tiny structures inside fossils without damaging them. Computer models help reconstruct ancient climates, continental positions, and ecosystems. Satellite observations improve understanding of geological structures that formed hundreds of millions of years ago. The end of the Permian period brought the greatest known mass extinction in Earth's history. An enormous percentage of marine species disappeared, along with many animals and plants living on land. Scientists believe several powerful factors likely worked together. Massive volcanic eruptions released huge amounts of gases into the atmosphere. Global temperatures changed dramatically. Ocean chemistry shifted. Oxygen levels in some parts of the oceans decreased. Food chains collapsed across many environments. Many ecosystems experienced severe disruption. Although this extinction eliminated countless species, some groups survived. These survivors inherited landscapes with many empty habitats. During the following Triassic period, life slowly recovered. Plants spread into damaged environments. Insects diversified once again. Reptiles expanded into new ecological roles. Among these reptiles, small early dinosaurs eventually appeared. At first, they were only one group among many different animals sharing the Earth, and their later dominance had not yet begun. The Great Permian Mass Extinction was the most severe known extinction event in the history of Earth. It happened about 252 million years ago, at the end of the Permian period. Before this event, life had spread across the land and the oceans in many different forms. Forests covered large areas, insects filled the air, and many kinds of reptiles, amphibians, fish, and marine animals lived in different environments. The oceans were home to coral reefs, shellfish, trilobites, sea scorpions, ammonites, brachiopods, and countless other living things. On land, many groups of animals had become well established, and different plants supported large ecosystems. The world seemed full of life, but powerful natural events changed everything in a relatively short period of Earth's long history. Scientists believe that enormous volcanic eruptions in what is now Siberia played the biggest role in causing this disaster. These eruptions released huge amounts of lava over vast areas. They also released carbon dioxide, methane, sulfur gases, and other substances into the atmosphere. These gases changed Earth's climate. Temperatures rose across much of the planet. The oceans became warmer. Rainfall patterns changed. The chemistry of the oceans also changed as more carbon dioxide dissolved into seawater. Oxygen levels in many parts of the oceans dropped, making it difficult for many marine animals to survive. Some areas became almost completely without oxygen. At the same time, the land experienced extreme heat, changing weather, and loss of healthy environments for plants and animals. The effects spread across nearly every part of the planet. Scientists estimate that around 9 out of every 10 marine species disappeared. On land, about 7 out of every 10 known vertebrate species became extinct. Countless insects, plants, and microscopic organisms also vanished. Many groups that had lived successfully for millions of years never recovered. Some disappeared forever. Others survived only through a few remaining species. When the extinction finally ended, Earth looked very different. the world that remained was much quieter than before. Many habitats that had once supported countless living things were nearly empty. Large forests had been destroyed in many regions. Coral reefs had almost completely disappeared. Rivers and lakes held fewer animals. The oceans contained fewer kinds of fish and invertebrates. Many predators had vanished. Many plant-eating animals had also disappeared. The balance that had existed before the extinction no longer existed. Life after the Great Permian mass extinction did not immediately return to normal. Recovery took a very long time. Scientists believe that it took millions of years before ecosystems became rich and stable again. Even though some living things survived, they faced difficult conditions that continued long after the worst part of the extinction had passed. The environment remained unstable. Temperatures stayed high in many places. Oxygen levels in parts of the oceans remained low. Volcanic activity may have continued for a long period, adding more gases to the atmosphere. The animals and plants that survived had to find ways to live in these harsh conditions. Survival depended on flexibility. Species that could eat different kinds of food often had better chances than those that depended on only one source of food. Animals that could move long distances sometimes found safer environments. Small animals often required less food than large animals, giving them another possible advantage during difficult times. Some species reproduced quickly, allowing their populations to recover faster after heavy losses. Among the survivors on land were several groups of reptiles and mammal relatives. During the Permian period, mammal relatives called therapsids had been common. Many species disappeared during the extinction, but a few survived. These survivors became some of the most important animals during the early part of the Triassic period. One well-known survivor was Lystrosaurus. This sturdy plant-eating animal had a strong beak and a barrel-shaped body. Fossils of Lystrosaurus have been found across many parts of the ancient southern continents. It became one of the most successful animals after the extinction. Lystrosaurus probably survived because it had several useful features. It could feed on tough plant material. It may have dug burrows that protected it from harsh weather. It may also have been able to survive with lower oxygen levels than many other animals. While scientists continue to study its biology, there is strong evidence that this animal spread widely after the extinction because many competing species had disappeared. The dominance of Lystrosaurus shows how different the world had become. Before the extinction, many plant-eating animals shared the land. After the extinction, entire regions became filled mainly with this one type of animal. Fossil discoveries show that in some places, Lystrosaurus fossils greatly outnumber those of other animals. This suggests that ecosystems had become much simpler than before. Another important survivor was a group of animals called cynodonts. These animals belong to the same broad branch of life that eventually gave rise to mammals. Early cynodonts survived the extinction and slowly continued to develop during the Triassic period. They had several features that later became important in mammals. Some had more advanced teeth with different shapes for different kinds of food. Others had body structures that supported more active movement. These early cynodonts remained relatively small during much of the early recovery period. Small size may have helped them survive because they needed less food. Their populations slowly expanded into new environments as ecosystems recovered. Over millions of years, later members of this group eventually gave rise to the first true mammals. Plants also faced enormous challenges after the extinction. Large forests had been damaged across wide areas. Many tree species disappeared. Soil erosion became common because fewer plant roots held the ground together. Rivers carried large amounts of loose sediment into lakes and seas. dust and ash covered parts of the land. The landscape in many places looked very different from the rich forests that had existed before. The first plants to return were often hardy species that could quickly spread into open ground. Ferns became especially important during the early recovery. Scientists sometimes refer to a fern spike, meaning that fern spores became especially common in rock layers, dating from shortly after the extinction. Ferns reproduce through spores rather than seeds, allowing many species to spread rapidly across disturbed environments. They helped cover bare ground and slowly improved soil conditions. As plant life slowly returned, insects also began to recover. Many insect groups had suffered heavy losses during the extinction. Fossil evidence suggests that insects experienced one of the few known major extinction events in their long history. As new plants spread across the land, insects gradually found new food sources and habitats. Different groups slowly became more diverse again, although full recovery required millions of years. The oceans remained under stress for a very long time. Many marine ecosystems had completely collapsed. Coral reefs, which had supported countless species before the extinction, disappeared almost entirely. Reef-building organisms took millions of years to return in significant numbers. During this long recovery, different marine animals occupied the empty spaces left behind by extinct species. Some shellfish survived in small numbers. Certain bivalves and gastropods continued living despite difficult conditions. Ammonoids, relatives of modern squids and octopuses, experienced severe losses. But a few species survived and later expanded rapidly into many new forms. Their fossils became common during the Triassic period, showing that recovery was slowly taking place. Fish also survived the extinction. Ray-finned fishes continued evolving after the disaster. Sharks also survived, although many shark species disappeared. Those that remained slowly spread into marine environments that had lost many competitors and predators. Over time, new fish groups appeared and filled ecological roles left empty by extinct animals. One of the greatest challenges facing marine animals after the extinction was the shortage of oxygen in seawater. Many ocean regions contained very little dissolved oxygen. Animals that needed high oxygen levels struggled to survive. Only species that could tolerate these difficult conditions remained in many places. As ocean circulation slowly improved over millions of years, oxygen levels gradually increased, allowing more complex ecosystems to develop again. Microorganisms played an important role during recovery. Tiny bacteria, algae, and plankton formed the base of many food chains. These microscopic organisms responded quickly to changing environmental conditions. Some species multiplied rapidly when conditions became favorable. They provided food for small animals, which in turn supported larger predators. Without these microscopic organisms, larger ecosystems could not rebuild. The extinction also changed the structure of food chains. Before the disaster, ecosystems contained many specialized species. Afterward, food chains became shorter and simpler. General feeding habits became more common because fewer kinds of food were available. As more plants and animals returned over time, food webs slowly became more complex again. Climate remained unstable during much of the early Triassic period. Temperatures stayed unusually warm across many regions. Seasonal weather may have become more intense in some places. Dry conditions affected large areas of land. Water sources changed location over time, forcing animals to move in search of food and water. These changing conditions slowed the recovery of ecosystems because species had to keep adapting to new environments. Large rivers continued carrying sediment from damaged landscapes into shallow seas. These sediments buried dead organisms, and preserved many fossils that scientists study today. The rock layers formed during this time provide important evidence about how ecosystems slowly recovered after the extinction. Fossils show changes in animal diversity, plant communities, and environmental conditions across millions of years. The extinction also opened opportunities for groups that had previously been less common. With many dominant animals gone, surviving species found empty habitats where they could spread. Evolution continued as always. Random genetic changes occurred in surviving populations. Natural selection favored individuals that could survive the new conditions. Over many generations, new species appeared from surviving ancestors. Archosaurs became one of the most important reptile groups during this recovery. Early archosaurs were not yet the dominant animals they would later become, but they steadily increased in diversity. This group eventually produced crocodile relatives, flying reptiles called pterosaurs, and dinosaurs. During the early stages after the extinction, these animals remained only one part of the recovering ecosystems. At first, archosaurs shared the land with surviving therapsids and many other reptiles. Different groups competed for food and living space. Environmental changes continued shaping which species survived and which disappeared. Some archosaurs developed longer legs that supported more efficient movement. Others evolved stronger jaws or different feeding habits. These changes gradually increased their success. The early Triassic landscapes often contained open areas with scattered vegetation rather than dense forests. Rivers, floodplains, lakes, and dry regions supported different communities of plants and animals. Seasonal flooding may have affected many environments. Animals needed to move between food sources and water supplies. Some species adapted to digging, others to running, and still others to swimming. The recovery of forests happened slowly because trees take longer to mature than smaller plants. Young forests gradually expanded as soil conditions improved. Fallen leaves and dead plants added organic material to the ground, making soils richer over time. Fungi and bacteria broke down this material, releasing nutrients that supported new plant growth. These natural recycling processes became increasingly important as ecosystems recovered. The return of forest also created habitats for many animals. Insects found food among leaves and bark. Small reptiles searched for insects. Larger predators hunted smaller animals. Birds did not yet exist, but many other reptiles occupied different levels of these developing ecosystems. Every new plant community supported increasing biological diversity. Freshwater environments also changed after the extinction. Rivers and lakes lost many species, but surviving fish, amphibians, and aquatic reptiles slowly expanded into available habitats. Aquatic plants spread along riverbanks and lake edges. Insects laid eggs in fresh water. Small food chains developed, supporting larger animals as recovery continued. Scientists continue studying fossils from this period because they provide valuable information about survival and recovery. Bone beds containing large numbers of fossils help researchers understand which species became common after the extinction. Fossil pollen and spores reveal changes in plant communities. Chemical evidence preserved in rocks shows changing temperatures, oxygen levels, and carbon cycles. Together, these discoveries allow scientists to reconstruct the conditions that existed after the extinction. Different parts of the world recovered at different speeds. Local climates, geography, and surviving species influenced how quickly ecosystems rebuilt. Some coastal environments recovered earlier than inland regions. Some river systems supported returning life sooner than nearby dry areas. Recovery did not happen at the same pace everywhere. Many extinct groups left empty ecological roles that remained unfilled for long periods. Predators, plant eaters, scavengers, and filter feeders had all suffered heavy losses. Surviving species slowly expanded into these available roles. Evolution produced new body forms, feeding methods and behaviors that allowed different animals to occupy habitats left vacant by extinct groups. The disappearance of so many competitors also allowed surviving species to spread across wider geographic areas. Fossils show that some animals occupied territories stretching across ancient continents. Since fewer competing species remained, these survivors could establish populations over much larger regions than before. Earth itself continued changing during this period. The continents remained joined together as the supercontinent Pangaea. This enormous landmass influenced climate by creating large inland regions far from the oceans. These interior areas often experienced dry conditions and strong seasonal temperature changes. Animals and plants living there faced additional environmental challenges beyond those caused by the extinction itself. The coastline of Pangaea stretched for enormous distances. Coastal habitats supported recovering marine ecosystems, where surviving animals slowly increased in diversity. Shallow seas provided breeding grounds for many species. Estuaries connected freshwater and marine environments, allowing different organisms to interact as ecosystems rebuilt. Volcanic gases gradually decreased over time, allowing Earth's atmosphere to become more stable. Carbon cycles slowly adjusted as plants removed carbon dioxide from the air through photosynthesis. Growing forests stored increasing amounts of carbon in wood, roots, and soils. Ocean chemistry also slowly improved as environmental conditions stabilized. These gradual changes created better conditions for continued biological recovery. Life remained vulnerable throughout much of the early recovery period. Additional environmental disturbances could easily affect populations that were still small. Some species disappeared after surviving the main extinction because they could not adapt to later changes. Others successfully established stable populations and eventually produced many descendant species. The process of evolution continued without interruption. Every generation contained slight differences among individuals. Some inherited features helped survival under the harsh conditions that followed the extinction. Those individuals were more likely to reproduce and pass those features to future generations. Over millions of years, these small changes accumulated, leading to entirely new species and new groups of organisms. Marine reptiles began appearing during the Triassic period as reptiles adapted to life in the oceans. These animals occupied roles that had been left empty after the extinction. Some became fast swimmers that hunted fish. Others fed on shellfish or different marine animals. Although they were reptiles, they spent much of their lives in the water. On land, reptiles became increasingly important members of recovering ecosystems. Different groups developed specialized diets and lifestyles. Some remained small insect eaters. Others became larger plant eaters or predators. These expanding reptile groups laid the foundation for the later rise of dinosaurs, although dinosaurs themselves would not become dominant until much later in the Triassic period. Amphibians also survived the extinction. Some large amphibians continued living in rivers, lakes, and wetlands. They hunted fish and smaller animals. Their continued survival shows that freshwater ecosystems, although heavily damaged, still supported important animal communities during recovery. Fungi became especially important after the extinction because they broke down enormous amounts of dead plant and animal material. This process returned nutrients to the soil. Nutrient recycling allowed new plants to grow more successfully. As vegetation increased, animal populations also expanded because more food became available. The rise of the first reptiles and their early relatives was an important part of the long history of life on Earth. This part of history took place long before dinosaurs appeared, during a time when the land was changing and living things were slowly adapting to new conditions. The first reptiles did not suddenly appear in a fully developed form. They came from older groups of animals that already lived on land and had been changing over many millions of years. These early animals carried many features from their ancestors, while also developing new traits that helped them survive in places where earlier animals struggled. Their story is one of slow change, many generations, and countless small steps that eventually produced a group of animals able to spread across much of the land. Before reptiles appeared, amphibian-like animals were among the main vertebrates living on land. These animals had descended from fish that slowly developed stronger fins, simple lungs, and limbs that could support their bodies outside water. Their early lives were still closely connected to ponds, rivers, lakes, and wetlands, because they needed water for reproduction. Their eggs had no strong outer covering, so they could dry out if left on dry land. Their young usually hatched as water-living larvae before changing into adults. This dependence on water limited where they could live and how far they could spread. As time passed, some groups of amphibian-like animals slowly developed new features that reduced their need to stay close to water. These changes did not happen in one generation. They appeared little by little over many millions of years. Small differences that helped animals survive were passed from parents to their young. After many generations, these changes became common within certain groups. Eventually, these gradual changes produced the earliest reptiles. The earliest reptiles appeared during the Carboniferous period, around 320 million years ago. At that time, Earth looked very different from today. Much of the land was covered with large forests filled with giant club mosses, horsetails, ferns, and seed ferns. Warm temperatures and high moisture supported thick plant growth across many regions. Vast swamps covered large areas, and dead plant material collected in these wetlands. Over an extremely long time, this plant material became the coal deposits found in many parts of the world today. The atmosphere during this period contained more oxygen than it does today. Higher oxygen levels helped many insects grow much larger than modern insects. Huge dragonfly relatives flew through the forests, while large millipede relatives crawled across the forest floor. Many kinds of spiders, insects, and other small animals filled the forests. These creatures provided food for larger animals living on land. The earliest reptiles lived among these forests. They were usually small animals with long bodies, strong legs, and long tails. Most were only about the size of a modern lizard, although some species were smaller, while others became larger over time. Their bodies were covered with dry skin, made of tough outer layers that reduced water loss. This was one of the important features that helped reptiles survive farther from water than many of their amphibian relatives. One of the greatest changes that separated reptiles from earlier land vertebrates was the development of the amniotic egg. This type of egg allowed the growing baby to develop inside a protected environment without needing to remain in water. The egg contained several membranes that surrounded and protected the embryo. These membranes stored food, removed waste, and helped prevent the egg from drying out. The shell also protected the developing animal, while still allowing oxygen to enter. Because of the amniotic egg, reptiles no longer needed to return to ponds or streams to reproduce. They could lay their eggs on land in places that stayed reasonably safe and moist enough for development. This opened many new habitats that had previously been difficult for land vertebrates to occupy. Forest floors, dry plains, and upland areas became available for permanent living instead of only temporary visits. The development of the amniotic egg was one of the most important events in the history of vertebrate evolution. It allowed reptiles and their descendants to spread across dry environments that had once been difficult to inhabit. Many later groups, including dinosaurs, birds, and mammals, inherited this important reproductive system from these early ancestors. Another important feature of the earliest reptiles was their skin. Amphibians usually have thin skin that allows water to move through it. This means they lose moisture easily and often need damp environments. Reptiles developed thicker skin, with scales made of keratin. Keratin is the same strong material found in human fingernails and hair. These scales reduced water loss and helped protect the body from injury. Their stronger skin also helped protect against harmful sunlight, rough surfaces, and small cuts that could become dangerous. This allowed reptiles to spend more time moving across dry ground without losing too much water. The skeleton of early reptiles also showed important improvements. Their limbs became better suited for walking across land. Stronger bones supported their weight more effectively. Their joints allowed steadier movement over uneven ground. Their feet could grip different surfaces, while supporting the body during walking, climbing, or running. The backbone also became stronger. This helped support the body while moving over land instead of swimming through water. Strong muscles attached to the backbone and limbs, providing greater control during movement. The skull of early reptiles also differed from that of many amphibians. Over time, openings appeared behind the eye sockets in different reptile groups. These openings provided space for larger jaw muscles. Stronger muscles allowed more powerful bites and made it easier to catch different kinds of prey or process different foods. Scientists divide early reptiles into several major groups based partly on these skull openings. Some early reptiles had no openings behind the eyes. These animals are often called anapsids. Others developed one opening behind each eye and became known as synapsids. Still others developed two openings behind each eye and became known as diapsids. These skull differences became important because each group followed different evolutionary paths over millions of years. Synapsids eventually gave rise to mammals. Diapsids eventually produced many later reptile groups, including dinosaurs, pterosaurs, crocodiles, lizards, snakes, and birds. The exact relationships among some early groups continue to be studied as new fossils are discovered. One of the earliest known reptiles is Hylonomus. This small animal lived around 315 million years ago. Fossils have been discovered inside ancient tree stumps, where these animals may have hidden from predators or searched for food. Hylonomus probably measured only about the length of a person's forearm. It likely fed on insects, spiders, and other small animals living among the forest plants. Its body looked simple compared with later reptiles, but it already possessed many important reptile features. Its dry skin, strong limbs, and land-based reproduction allowed it to live more independently from water than earlier amphibians. Another early reptile was Paleothyrus. This animal lived during the late Carboniferous period and showed several features shared with later reptiles. It probably hunted insects and other small creatures while moving through the thick forests. Fossils suggest it had a light body that allowed quick movement across the ground. Many other early reptile species existed during this period. Most were small because larger predators already occupied many environments. Small body size allowed them to hide beneath fallen logs, inside burrows, and among dense vegetation. They could escape larger hunters while feeding on insects, worms, and other small animals. The forests where these animals lived were rich ecosystems. Huge trees formed thick canopies that blocked much of the sunlight from reaching the ground. Dead leaves, branches, and fallen trunks created many hiding places. Small streams flowed through the forests, while swamps covered wide areas. Countless insects lived among the plants. These conditions supported many food sources for early reptiles. The climate during much of the Carboniferous period remained warm and humid across many regions. Seasonal changes still occurred, but many forests received abundant rainfall. These conditions favored large plant growth and provided shelter for numerous animals. Toward the end of the Carboniferous period, Earth's climate slowly began changing. Some areas became cooler while others grew drier. Large swamps started shrinking in several regions. Forests changed as plant communities adjusted to the new conditions. Animals also faced new challenges. These environmental changes created opportunities for reptiles. Because they were less dependent on water than amphibians, reptiles often survived better in areas becoming drier. Their eggs could develop away from ponds, and their waterproof skin reduced water loss. As dry habitats expanded, reptiles slowly spread into places where amphibians found survival more difficult. This did not mean amphibians disappeared. Many amphibians continued living successfully in wetlands, rivers, lakes, and moist forests. They remained important members of many ecosystems. Reptiles simply expanded into additional environments that became available as conditions changed. The Permian period began around 299 million years ago. During this period, the continents gradually came together to form the giant landmass known as Pangaea. Large inland regions became much drier because they lay far from the oceans. Deserts spread across many areas, while seasonal rainfall became common in others. These changing landscapes encouraged further reptile evolution. Different reptile groups adapted to different habitats. Some lived in forests, others occupied open plains. Some specialized in dry environments with little rainfall. Others remained near rivers and lakes while still reproducing on land. As reptile diversity increased, their diets also became more varied. Many species remained insect eaters. Others developed stronger teeth and jaws for eating larger animals. Some began feeding mainly on plants. Plant-eating reptiles needed broader teeth that could break tough plant material into smaller pieces before swallowing. Plant-eating reptiles played an important role in expanding food chains on land. By feeding directly on plants, they converted plant energy into animal tissue that later became food for predators. This allowed more complex ecosystems to develop. Predatory reptiles also evolved. These hunters developed sharper teeth, quicker movement, improved senses, and stronger jaws. Some waited quietly before attacking passing prey. Others actively searched for food across large areas. Their hunting behavior became more specialized over time. The senses of early reptiles gradually improved. Better eyesight helped them detect movement and identify food or danger. Improved hearing allowed them to notice approaching predators or prey. Their sense of smell became useful for locating food, recognizing mates, and identifying suitable nesting places. Brain development also continued slowly. Although early reptile brains remained relatively small, certain regions became more specialized for processing information from the senses and controlling movement. This allowed more coordinated behavior during hunting, escaping danger, and reproduction. Reproduction remained one of the greatest strengths of reptiles. After mating, females laid eggs in protected locations where the developing young had a greater chance of survival. Some buried their eggs beneath soil or sand. Others placed them beneath leaves or inside sheltered places. The embryos developed entirely within the egg, before hatching as small reptiles already capable of breathing air. Unlike many amphibian young, newly hatched reptiles did not need to pass through a water-living larval stage. They emerged looking like miniature adults. Although they remained vulnerable to predators, they could immediately begin life on land. Young reptiles faced many dangers. Larger animals hunted them, food could become scarce, and weather conditions sometimes destroyed nests. Many hatchlings probably died before reaching adulthood. Those that survived eventually reproduced and passed their successful traits to future generations. Predation shaped reptile evolution in many ways. Faster movement helped escape danger. Better camouflage reduced the chance of being seen. Protective scales reduced injuries. Stronger jaws improved hunting success. Every small improvement that increased survival could become more common over many generations. Burrowing became another useful behavior among some early reptiles and their relatives. Underground shelters protected them from extreme temperatures, predators, and changing weather. Burrows also provided safe places for resting, laying eggs, and avoiding dry conditions. The early relatives of reptiles included many amphibian-like tetrapods that shared features with both groups. These animals helped scientists understand how reptile characteristics developed gradually, rather than appearing all at once. Fossils show combinations of traits that reveal the slow nature of evolution. Some early relatives still depended heavily on water while already possessing stronger limbs. Others had improved lungs but retained older reproductive methods. Some showed changes in skull structure before developing fully reptilian reproduction. These mixtures of features demonstrate that evolution often proceeds in small steps rather than sudden changes. Scientists study fossil bones very carefully to understand these transitions. Even tiny differences in the shape of a skull, backbone, limb bone, or foot can reveal relationships between species. Modern technology allows researchers to examine fossils without damaging them. Detailed scans can reveal internal structures hidden inside rock. Fossil discoveries have been made in North America, Europe, and several other parts of the world. During the Carboniferous and Permian periods, many of today's continents were connected differently than they are now. Animals could spread across regions that are currently separated by oceans. The fossil record is not complete. Many animals died without leaving fossils. Bodies often decayed before burial. Others were destroyed by erosion or geological activity. Because of this, scientists continue discovering new species that improve our understanding of early reptile evolution. Every new fossil adds another piece to the history of life. Some discoveries confirm earlier ideas, while others require scientists to change previous interpretations. Scientific understanding grows as additional evidence becomes available. Early reptiles occupied many ecological roles. Small insect eaters helped control insect populations. Plant eaters consumed leaves, stems, seeds, and other vegetation. Meat eaters hunted smaller animals. Scavengers probably fed on dead animals when opportunities appeared. Each role contributed to the balance of ancient ecosystems. Competition also influenced evolution. Different species often searched for similar food or shelter. Animals that used resources more efficiently often survived better. Over time, species specialized in different foods or habitats, reducing direct competition. Climate continued changing throughout the Permian period. Some regions experienced long dry seasons, others remained wetter. These differences encouraged reptiles to develop many body forms and behaviors suited to local conditions. Water conservation became increasingly important in dry environments. Reptile kidneys became more efficient at retaining water while removing waste. Their skin continued limiting moisture loss. Behavioral changes, such as seeking shade during the hottest parts of the day, also helped conserve water. The development of claws also improved life on land. Claws helped reptiles dig burrows, climb over rough surfaces, hold prey, and gain better grip while walking. These simple structures provided many advantages in different environments. The teeth of early reptiles showed increasing variety. Sharp, pointed teeth suited insect eaters and meat eaters. Broader teeth suited plant eaters. Tooth shape often reveals the diet of extinct animals, even when stomach contents are not preserved. Jaw muscles also became stronger through time. Larger muscles increased biting force and allowed animals to process tougher food. Changes in skull structure provided space for these muscles without greatly increasing head size. Body posture gradually improved. Earlier amphibian-like animals often had limbs extending widely from the sides of the body. Some reptile groups slowly developed more efficient limb positions that improved walking endurance and stability. These changes supported longer movement across land. Respiration also improved. More effective lungs allowed reptiles to remain active for longer periods. Efficient breathing supplied muscles with oxygen needed for movement, hunting, and escaping predators. Blood circulation supported these improvements. Better circulation delivered oxygen and nutrients throughout the body while removing waste products. These internal changes work together with improvements in breathing and movement. The nervous system continued becoming more organized. Faster communication between the brain and muscles improved coordination. Better control of movement increased survival during both hunting and escape. Vision played a major role in reptile survival. Eyes positioned on the sides of the head allowed wide fields of view in many species. This helped detect predators approaching from different directions. Some predators later developed more forward-facing eyes that improved depth perception while hunting. Color patterns probably existed in many early reptiles, although fossil evidence rarely preserves skin colors. Patterns may have helped individuals avoid predators, recognize members of their own species, or regulate body temperature by absorbing different amounts of sunlight. Like modern reptiles, the earliest reptiles probably depended heavily on outside temperatures to regulate body heat. They likely warmed themselves in sunlight during cooler periods and sought shade when temperatures became too high. This behavior reduced energy needs because they did not produce as much internal body heat as mammals and birds later would. Seasonal changes influenced their lives. Food availability often varied during the year. Reproduction may have occurred during seasons offering the best conditions for egg development and hatchling survival. Rainfall patterns affected plant growth, insect numbers, and water supplies. Disease and parasites also existed in ancient ecosystems. Tiny organisms lived inside and on larger animals just as they do today. Early reptiles likely faced infections, parasites, and injuries throughout their lives. Individuals with stronger resistance often survived longer and reproduced more successfully. Natural disasters occasionally affected reptile populations. Volcanic eruptions, floods, droughts, storms, and wildfires changed habitats. Some local populations disappeared, while others survived in nearby areas and later spread again when conditions improved. Evolution did not follow a straight path. Many reptile groups eventually disappeared without leaving living descendants. Others survived and diversified into entirely new branches of life. Extinction and diversification occurred repeatedly throughout Earth's history. The earliest reptiles formed the foundation for later evolutionary success. Over many millions of years, descendants of these small animals produced an enormous variety of body shapes, sizes, diets, and lifestyles. Some became large predators, others remained small insect eaters. Some returned to the water, others became skilled climbers or fast runners. Synapsids, one of the major early branches, gradually developed features that eventually led to mammals. Their skull opening allowed stronger jaw muscles, and over time many additional changes appeared in their teeth, jaws, limbs, and body structure. Although the earliest synapsids still looked reptile-like in many ways, they belonged to the lineage that ultimately produced mammals. Diapsids followed another path. This branch later produced numerous reptile groups that dominated many environments during later periods of Earth's history. Their descendants included animals that lived on land, in water, and in the air. The earliest synapsids first appeared during the Carboniferous period, around 320 million years ago. At that time, Earth looked very different from today. Much of the land was covered with thick forests, filled with giant club mosses, ferns, horsetails, and seed ferns. The climate was often warm and humid in many places, although different regions had different weather conditions. Large insects flew through the air, early amphibians lived near rivers and swamps, and many different kinds of reptiles were beginning to spread across the land. Synapsids were not true mammals, but they already had one important feature that separated them from reptiles and many other groups. Their skull had a single opening behind each eye socket. This opening gave space for stronger jaw muscles. Stronger jaw muscles allowed them to bite with greater force and control. Scientists use this opening in the skull as one of the main features for identifying members of the synapsid group. This feature remained important throughout the long history of synapsids and can still be traced in mammals today. The earliest synapsids looked different from modern mammals. Many had long bodies, spreading legs, long tails, and scales covering much of their skin. Some looked very similar to reptiles, which caused people in the past to mistakenly think they were reptiles. Modern research has shown that they belonged to a separate branch of life. Even though they shared some features with reptiles, they followed their own path of evolution that eventually led to mammals. One of the best-known early synapsids was Dimetrodon. This animal lived during the Permian period, many millions of years before the first dinosaurs appeared. Dimetrodon is often mistaken for a dinosaur because of its famous sail rising from its back. The sail was formed by long bones extending upward from the backbone, with skin stretched between them. Scientists have suggested several possible reasons for this sail. It may have helped control body temperature by collecting warmth from sunlight during cool mornings or releasing heat during warmer parts of the day. It may also have helped members of the same species recognize one another or attract mates. The exact purpose remains uncertain. Dimetrodon was a powerful predator. It had a large head filled with sharp teeth that were designed for catching and eating meat. Unlike many earlier animals whose teeth were mostly similar in shape, Dimetrodon already showed different kinds of teeth. It had large front teeth for grabbing prey and smaller teeth farther back for cutting food into smaller pieces. This early development of specialized teeth became an important step toward the more advanced teeth found in mammals. Many other early synapsids lived during the same time. Some hunted other animals while others fed on plants. Plant-eating species often developed larger bodies and stronger jaws that could process tough leaves and stems. Their teeth became broader and flatter, making it easier to break down plant material before swallowing it. During the Permian period, synapsids spread across many parts of the world. Fossils have been discovered in places that are now North America, Europe, Africa, Asia, South America, and Antarctica. At that time, these lands were joined together as part of the giant supercontinent called Pangaea. Animals could travel across wide areas without crossing large oceans because many of today's separate continents were connected. The climate changed many times during the long history of synapsids. Some regions became drier while others remained wetter. Forests expanded and later shrank in different places. Synapsids showed great flexibility as they adapted to changing environments. Different species evolved body shapes, feeding habits, and lifestyles that allowed them to survive in forests, open plains, river valleys, and dry regions. As synapsids continued to evolve, one group called therapsids appeared during the middle part of the Permian period. Therapsids showed many features that moved them closer to mammals. Their legs gradually shifted beneath their bodies instead of extending outward to the sides. This change allowed them to move more efficiently and support their weight better while walking and running. The skulls of therapsids also continued to change. Their jaw muscles became larger and stronger. Their teeth became even more specialized. Instead of having rows of nearly identical teeth, many therapsids developed different teeth for different jobs. Front teeth could grip food, pointed teeth could tear flesh, and broader teeth could crush or grind food. This made feeding more effective and allowed different species to specialize in different diets. The jaw itself slowly changed over millions of years. Early synapsids had jaws made from several bones. During later evolution, one bone became larger and took over most of the work of supporting the lower jaw. Other jaw bones became smaller. Much later in true mammals, some of these smaller bones became part of the middle ear, helping mammals hear sounds more clearly. This important change happened gradually over an extremely long period. Many therapsids had larger openings in the skull that provided more room for powerful jaw muscles. Stronger muscles allowed stronger bites and more efficient chewing. Better chewing meant food could be broken into smaller pieces before entering the stomach, improving digestion and allowing animals to gain more energy from their meals. Some therapsids became very large plant eaters. Their bodies grew heavy, supported by thick legs and strong bones. They often had broad chests, powerful shoulders, and wide ribs that protected large internal organs. Their heads carried strong jaws, capable of processing large amounts of vegetation every day. Other therapsids remained active hunters. They had sharp claws, keen eyesight, and powerful jaws filled with cutting teeth. Some probably hunted alone, while others may have lived in small groups. Fossils sometimes preserve several individuals together, although scientists continue to study whether these animals actually lived together or were buried in the same place by natural events. The skin covering synapsids remains difficult to study because skin rarely becomes fossilized. Most fossils preserve only bones and teeth. Some scientists think many early synapsids had scales similar to reptiles. Later members may have developed skin with fewer scales and perhaps even simple hair-like coverings. Evidence from later mammal relatives suggests that hair eventually evolved before true mammals appeared. Hair would have provided warmth, protected sensitive skin, and helped with touch. It may also have played a role in communication. Body temperature is another important area of research. Many early reptiles depended heavily on outside temperatures to warm or cool their bodies. Mammals today produce much of their own body heat through internal processes. Scientists believe synapsids gradually evolved toward this ability over millions of years. Bone structure, growth patterns, and other fossil evidence suggest that many later synapsids had higher activity levels than earlier species, their bodies may have produced more heat, allowing them to remain active for longer periods under different weather conditions. The heart and lungs of synapsids cannot be directly studied because soft organs rarely fossilize. Scientists instead examine the shapes of ribs, the structure of the chest, and the spaces inside fossil bones. These clues suggest that breathing became more effective as synapsids evolved. Better breathing supported more active lifestyles by delivering greater amounts of oxygen throughout the body. The growth of young synapsids also changed over time. Some evidence suggests that later species grew faster than many reptiles. Faster growth allowed young animals to reach larger sizes more quickly, reducing the time they remained vulnerable to predators. Bone tissue preserves growth patterns that scientists can study under microscopes. These growth rings provide information about how quickly animals developed during their lives. The brain also gradually changed. Fossil skulls preserve spaces where the brain once rested. These spaces suggest that certain parts of the brain became larger in later synapsids. Better senses, improved movement, and more complex behavior may have resulted from these changes. Smell appears to have become especially important. Larger areas related to smell suggest that many synapsids relied heavily on detecting scents while searching for food, finding mates, or avoiding danger. The eyes of many synapsids faced partly forward instead of completely toward the sides of the head. This arrangement improved depth perception, making it easier for predators to judge distances while hunting and helping plant eaters move safely through their surroundings. The teeth of later synapsids continued to become more advanced. Incisor-like teeth at the front helped bite food. Canine-like teeth became useful for holding prey or defending against attackers. Teeth farther back became broader for crushing or grinding. This division of labor among different teeth became one of the defining features inherited by mammals. Some synapsids replaced their teeth fewer times than reptiles. Many reptiles replaced teeth throughout life. Mammals usually develop only two main sets of teeth. The gradual reduction in tooth replacement began before true mammals appeared. Fewer replacements allowed teeth to fit together more precisely, improving chewing. Therapsids eventually gave rise to another important group called cynodonts. Cynodonts showed even more mammal-like features than earlier synapsids. Their skulls became larger in relation to their bodies, their snouts became shorter, their jaws became stronger, and their teeth became even more specialized. Many scientists view cynodonts as the closest relatives of true mammals. The lower jaw of cynodonts became dominated by one large bone. Smaller jaw bones became less important for chewing. This gradual shift continued until true mammals evolved the familiar jaw structure found today. The noses of cynodonts also changed. Their nasal passages became more complex. Some evidence suggests the presence of structures that helped warm and moisten air before it reached the lungs. This would have supported higher activity levels and more efficient breathing. Scientists also believe many cynodonts possessed whiskers. Although whiskers themselves rarely fossilize, tiny openings in fossil skulls suggest nerves that supplied sensitive facial hairs. Whiskers would have helped animals feel objects, especially during darkness or inside burrows. Burrowing became an important lifestyle for several synapsid species. Fossil burrows have been found with skeletons preserved inside them. Burrows protected animals from extreme temperatures, predators, floods, and fires. They also provided safe places for raising young. Evidence for parental care has also been discovered in some synapsid fossils. Adult skeletons have occasionally been found together with young individuals inside burrows. While every discovery must be studied carefully, these fossils suggest that some species protected and cared for their offspring after birth instead of leaving them immediately. The Permian period eventually ended with the largest known mass extinction in Earth's history. Around 252 million years ago, enormous volcanic eruptions released huge amounts of gases into the atmosphere. Global temperatures changed, oceans lost much of their oxygen, and many ecosystems collapsed. A very large percentage of marine species disappeared. Many land animals also became extinct. The mass extinction greatly reduced the diversity of synapsids. Many successful groups disappeared forever. Entire branches of their family tree ended during this crisis. Only a small number of lineages survived into the following Triassic period. The surviving synapsids faced a world that looked very different from the one their ancestors had known. Forests had been destroyed in many places. Plant communities changed. Food became harder to find. Temperatures remained difficult in many regions. Survival required rapid adaptation. During the Triassic period, surviving synapsids continued evolving alongside many new reptile groups. Early archosaurs became increasingly successful. These animals eventually gave rise to crocodiles, pterosaurs, and dinosaurs. Competition for food and habitat became greater than before. Even though archosaurs expanded, synapsids did not disappear. Many remained important members of ecosystems. Small and medium-sized species continued hunting insects, eating plants, and feeding on smaller animals. Others filled specialized ecological roles that helped maintain balanced environments. Some cynodonts became much smaller than earlier synapsids. Smaller bodies required less food and allowed these animals to hide more easily from predators. Many probably became active during the night, reducing encounters with larger hunters that searched for prey during daylight hours. Living at night encouraged further changes. Better hearing became increasingly valuable. Improved senses of smell and touch also became more useful. Larger eyes helped gather more light in dark conditions. These features later became common in early mammals. Scientists have discovered fossil evidence showing that some later cynodonts possessed secondary palates. A secondary palate forms a bony roof inside the mouth, separating the nasal passages from the mouth itself. This allows an animal to breathe while chewing food. Mammals possess this feature today, and its early development helped support more efficient feeding. The rib cage also continued changing. Some evidence suggests that breathing relied less on whole-body movement and became more efficient through changes in muscles and the shape of the chest. Better breathing supported longer periods of activity. The backbone of later synapsids became more flexible in certain areas, while remaining strong enough to support movement. Improved posture made walking and running more effective. Limbs positioned beneath the body reduced wasted energy during movement. Many synapsids developed stronger shoulder and hip joints. These improvements allowed smoother movement across different kinds of ground. They could climb slopes, cross rough landscapes, and travel greater distances while searching for food, water, or shelter. Fossil discoveries from South Africa have played a major role in understanding synapsids. Rocks from the Karoo Basin contain many well-preserved skeletons representing different stages of synapsid evolution. Scientists have spent many decades studying these fossils to understand how mammal ancestors gradually changed over time. Important fossils have also been found in Russia, China, Brazil, North America, Antarctica, and several European countries. Each discovery adds new information about body structure, growth, diet, movement, and relationships between different species. Modern technology has greatly improved fossil research. High-resolution scanning allows scientists to study the inside of fossil skulls without damaging them. Digital models reveal tiny details hidden inside solid rock. These methods help researchers examine brain cavities, inner ears, blood vessel channels, and tooth roots. Microscopes reveal fine details inside fossil bones. Bone cells preserve patterns of growth that help estimate age, growth speed, and overall health. Chemical studies of fossils sometimes provide information about ancient environments and diets. Scientists classify synapsids into many different families based on shared features of the skull, teeth, backbone, limbs, and other bones. As new fossils are discovered, these classifications sometimes change. Better evidence occasionally shows that certain species were more closely related than previously believed. The study of synapsids continues to develop because new discoveries appear almost every year. Fossils from previously unexplored regions sometimes reveal species unlike any seen before. Even fossils collected many years ago continue producing new information when examined with modern equipment. Understanding synapsids helps explain the long history leading to mammals. Every mammal living today shares ancient ancestry with these distant animals. Features such as specialized teeth, stronger jaws, improved hearing, more upright posture, complex breathing, faster growth, advanced senses, and possible body hair all developed gradually during the long history of synapsid evolution. The fossil record shows that evolution happened through many small changes, spread across enormous lengths of time. No single species suddenly became a mammal. Instead, countless generations slowly accumulated new features. Some traits appeared early, while others developed much later. Different branches evolved in different ways, depending on the environments in which they lived. Synapsids occupied deserts, forests, river systems, floodplains, dry grass-covered areas, and many other habitats. Their success across many environments demonstrates their ability to adapt to changing conditions. Some species remained small throughout their existence, while others reached impressive body sizes. Some fed almost entirely on plants, while others specialized in hunting animals or eating a wide variety of foods. The extinction of many synapsid groups did not erase their place in Earth's history. Their surviving descendants continued evolving through the Triassic period until the earliest true mammals appeared. Those first mammals remained relatively small for a very long time, while dinosaurs dominated many land ecosystems. Even during that time, the ancient heritage inherited from synapsids remained present in every mammal lineage that followed. Ancient predators lived on Earth long before the first dinosaurs appeared. These animals ruled the land, rivers, lakes, and shallow seas during a time when life was changing in many important ways. They belonged to many different groups and came in many shapes and sizes. Some were small hunters that searched for insects and other tiny animals. Others became huge meat-eaters that stood at the top of the food chain. Their lives stretched across millions of years, beginning after the first land animals appeared and continuing through the long periods before dinosaurs became the dominant land animals. Their story is one of survival, change, and adaptation, as the planet itself changed again and again. The world before dinosaurs looked very different from the Earth we know today. The continents were slowly moving across the surface of the planet. Much of the land gradually came together into one giant landmass known as Pangaea. This large landmass created dry regions far from the oceans. Some places had forests filled with giant plants, while others became wide deserts with little rainfall. Rivers crossed the land, lakes formed in low areas, and swamps covered parts of the landscape. Temperatures changed from place to place, and the climate became warmer or drier during the different times. Every environmental change affected the animals that lived there, including the predators that depended on other animals for food. The earliest land predators were not the same as later reptiles or dinosaurs. Many of them descended from amphibian ancestors, that had first moved from water onto land. Early amphibians still depended on water for breeding, but some became skilled hunters on land. They hunted fish near rivers and lakes, while others waited along muddy banks for animals that came close enough to catch. Their bodies were often long, with strong jaws filled with sharp teeth. Some had broad heads that allowed powerful bites. These early hunters played an important part in the growing ecosystems of ancient Earth. As time passed, reptiles became better adapted for life on land. One important change was the development of eggs protected by shells, allowing reproduction away from water. This meant reptiles could spread into dry places where amphibians could not easily survive. Their skin also helped prevent water loss, making them better suited for harsh environments. These changes opened many new opportunities for reptiles, including those that hunted other animals. Over many millions of years, reptiles became more diverse, and many evolved into successful predators. One of the most important groups during this ancient time was the synapsids. Although many people think of reptiles when discussing ancient predators, synapsids became some of the most successful meat-eaters before dinosaurs appeared. These animals were distant relatives of mammals rather than true reptiles. Early synapsids developed many different body forms. Some ate plants while others specialized in hunting animals. Their success lasted for a very long period and shaped life on land long before dinosaurs existed. Among the best-known synapsid predators was Dimetrodon. Although many people mistakenly believe it was a dinosaur, it lived many millions of years before the first dinosaurs evolved. Dimetrodon had a long body, powerful legs, and a large head with strong jaws. Its mouth contained sharp teeth of different sizes. Large teeth helped seize prey, while smaller teeth helped tear flesh into pieces. This variety of teeth made feeding more effective than in many earlier animals that had mostly similar teeth. The most striking feature of Dimetrodon was the large sail rising from its back. This sail was supported by long bones extending upward from the backbone. Scientists continue studying the exact purpose of the sail. Many believe it may have helped control body temperature by warming quickly in sunlight or releasing heat when necessary. Others suggest it may have been used to attract mates or to make the animal appear larger to rivals. Whatever its purpose, the sail made Dimetrodon one of the most recognizable predators of its time. Dimetrodon probably hunted many kinds of animals living in its environment. It may have waited quietly before attacking suddenly. Strong jaw muscles allowed it to bite with great force. Fossils show that its teeth were designed for gripping struggling prey. Once captured, the prey had little chance of escape. Smaller reptiles, amphibians, fish and other synapsids may all have been part of its diet depending on where it lived. Many other synapside predators shared ancient landscapes with Dimetrodon. Some had shorter bodies and stronger limbs. Others developed larger heads or longer jaws. Each species filled its own place within the environment. Competition for food encouraged changes over many generations. Those better suited for hunting survived more successfully and passed their characteristics to future generations. As the Permian period continued, new predators appeared. Some belonged to a group called therapsids. These animals represented a later stage in synapsid evolution. Therapsids showed several features that later became common in mammals. Their legs gradually moved beneath their bodies instead of spreading far to the sides. This change made movement more efficient and may have helped some species run faster or travel longer distances without tiring as quickly. Many therapsid predators developed stronger jaw muscles and more specialized teeth. Their mouths contained cutting teeth in the front and crushing teeth farther back. This allowed them to process meat more effectively. Better chewing meant they could obtain more energy from their food. Some evidence also suggests that certain therapsids may have had faster body processes than earlier animals, helping them remain active for longer periods. One famous therapsid predator was Inostrancevia. This large hunter belonged to a group known as Gorgonopsians. It had an impressive skull filled with long, saber-like canine teeth. These large teeth could deliver deep wounds to prey. The rest of the teeth worked together to slice through flesh. Strong neck muscles helped control the powerful head during attacks. Inostrancevia likely hunted large plant-eating animals that shared its environment during the late Permian. Gorgonopsians became some of the top predators of their age. They existed across large areas of ancient Pangaea. Fossils show that they varied greatly in size. Smaller species hunted smaller animals, while the largest members hunted some of the biggest herbivores of their time. Their success continued until the great mass extinction at the end of the Permian period. Another important group of therapsid predators included therocephalians. These animals were usually smaller than Gorgonopsians but still effective hunters. They possessed strong jaws and sharp teeth suited for eating meat. Some species hunted reptiles and amphibians, while others searched for small animals hiding among plants or beneath fallen branches. Their flexible lifestyles allowed them to survive in different environments. Cynodonts also appeared during this time. Many early cynodonts were predators or insect eaters. They developed even more advanced features later associated with mammals. Their teeth became highly specialized. Their jaw structure changed significantly, and their skulls became more complex. Some scientists believe certain cynodonts may even have had hair and warm body temperatures, although direct evidence remains limited for many early species. The environments where these predators lived contained many possible food sources. Large plant-eating synapsids grazed on ancient vegetation. Amphibians occupied rivers and wetlands. Early reptiles spread into dry regions. Insects became increasingly diverse. Each group created opportunities for predators to find food. Hunting methods differed according to body shape, strength, speed, and available prey. Some predators relied on strength instead of speed. They hid among plants or beside water and waited patiently. When prey approached, they launched sudden attacks using powerful jaws. Other hunters probably moved across wide areas, searching for weaker animals. Some may have followed the scent of prey or looked for signs of recent movement. Every successful hunt depended on careful timing and physical ability. Ancient predators also faced dangers. Large hunters sometimes fought one another over territory or food. Injuries from prey could become serious because there were no modern medicines to treat wounds. Broken bones, damaged teeth, or infected injuries could make hunting difficult. Fossils sometimes show healed injuries, proving that certain animals survived serious accidents before continuing their lives. The end of the Permian period brought the largest known mass extinction in Earth's history. Around the world, enormous volcanic eruptions released huge amounts of gases into the atmosphere. Temperatures changed, rainfall patterns shifted, ocean conditions worsened, and many ecosystems collapsed. Countless plant and animal species disappeared forever. Many ancient predators also became extinct because the animals they hunted vanished or became extremely rare. The few predators that survived entered a world very different from the one their ancestors had known. Forests disappeared in many places. Dry conditions spread across large regions. Food became scarce. Surviving animals had to adapt quickly to changing environments. Smaller body size, flexible diets, and the ability to survive difficult conditions became valuable advantages. During the Triassic period, new groups of reptiles expanded across the recovering world. Among these were archosaurs, a group that eventually produced crocodilians, pterosaurs, dinosaurs, and birds. At first, however, dinosaurs were only a small part of the archosaur family. Other archosaurs became the dominant predators during much of the early and middle Triassic. One important group included Rauisuchians. These large archosaurs developed powerful bodies supported by strong legs. Unlike many earlier reptiles, their limbs stood more directly beneath their bodies. This posture improved movement and allowed efficient walking over long distances. Some species reached very large sizes and became among the most powerful predators of the Triassic landscapes. Rauisuchians possessed massive skulls with rows of sharp teeth. Their jaws could deliver crushing bites, capable of killing large prey. They hunted many kinds of animals, including early reptiles and plant-eating archosaurs. Fossil evidence suggests they occupied the highest hunting positions in many ecosystems before large predatory dinosaurs became common. Prehistoric was one of these impressive predators. It lived during the Middle Triassic and possessed a large body, strong limbs, and a heavy skull. Its teeth curved slightly backward, helping hold struggling prey. Once prey entered its jaws, escape became extremely difficult. Prehistoric probably hunted large herbivores, but also may have fed on dead animals whenever opportunities appeared. Saurosuchus became another important predator later in the Triassic. It reached considerable size and possessed powerful muscles throughout its body. Fossils indicate that it moved efficiently across land. It likely hunted many different animals depending on availability. As one of the largest hunters of its environment, Saurosuchus played a major role in maintaining balance among animal populations. Prehistoric appeared later during the late Triassic. It became one of the largest meat-eating archosaurs in parts of ancient North America. Its body measured several meters in length. Strong hind legs supported much of its weight, while powerful forelimbs helped control prey during attacks. Its large head contained strong jaws lined with sharp teeth capable of cutting deeply into flesh. Some scientists believe Prehistoric may have occasionally walked with its front body raised for short periods, although it normally moved using all four limbs. Regardless of its exact movement style, it clearly possessed impressive strength. Fossil discoveries show that it shared its environment with some of the earliest dinosaurs, although dinosaurs remained much smaller than many of these giant archosaur predators during that time. Another remarkable predator was Phaseologicus. This enormous Rauisuchian lived in what is now South America. It became one of the largest land predators before giant meat-eating dinosaurs evolved. Its huge skull and heavy body allowed it to overpower large prey. Fossils remain incomplete, but available evidence indicates an animal of impressive size and hunting ability. Not all successful Triassic predators were giant land hunters. Crocodile relatives also developed into effective hunters. Some remained small while others grew much larger. Early crocodile relatives occupied rivers, lakes and wetlands where fish and amphibians were plentiful. Some later species became capable hunters on land as well. Phytosaurs looked surprisingly similar to modern crocodiles, even though they belonged to a different branch of archosaurs. They possessed long snouts filled with sharp teeth designed for catching slippery prey. Their eyes and nostrils sat high on the head, allowing them to remain mostly underwater, while watching animals approaching the shore. Fish formed much of their diet, but they probably captured larger animals that came close enough to the water's edge. Large amphibians also remained important predators during parts of the Triassic. Temnospondyls survived the Great Extinction and continued living in rivers and lakes. Some species reached impressive sizes. Their flat heads, wide mouths, and sharp teeth allowed them to capture fish, reptiles and smaller amphibians. They often waited beneath the water before striking suddenly at passing prey. One famous temnospondyle was Mastodonsaurus. It possessed an enormous head making up much of its body length. Its jaws contained long teeth capable of gripping struggling prey. Fossils indicate it spent much of its life in water, where it became one of the largest aquatic predators of its environment. Another important aquatic predator was Metoposaurus. Although generally smaller than Mastodonsaurus, it remained a dangerous hunter in rivers and ponds. It probably fed mainly on fish but also captured other animals entering the water. Large numbers of fossils found together suggest that groups of these amphibians may have gathered in shrinking pools during dry seasons. Ancient seas also contained powerful predators before dinosaurs ruled the land. Sharks had already existed for many millions of years. Early sharks displayed many body forms. Some resembled modern sharks, while others possessed unusual head shapes or specialized teeth. They hunted fish, smaller sharks, and many marine animals living within ancient oceans. One unusual shark was Helicoprion. It possessed a remarkable spiral arrangement of teeth, unlike anything seen in modern animals. Scientists studied these fossils for many years before understanding how the tooth structure fit inside the lower jaw. Helicoprion likely used this unusual arrangement to slice soft-bodied prey, such as squid-like animals living in ancient seas. Freshwater systems supported many predators besides amphibians. Large fish hunted smaller fish using speed and sharp teeth. Some armored fish had disappeared earlier, but many ray-finned fishes continued diversifying. Rivers and lakes became busy hunting grounds where predators competed for food beneath the surface. Insects also played important roles within ancient food webs. Giant dragonfly relatives hunted smaller insects during earlier periods, while many other insect predators searched among leaves, bark, and soil. Although tiny compared with large synapsids or archosaurs, these hunters controlled populations of smaller animals and formed part of larger food chains. Ancient predators depended heavily on their senses. Vision helped detect movement across open ground. Smell likely played a major role for many hunters seeking prey hidden by plants or darkness. Hearing may have allowed detection of approaching animals. Vibrations through the ground or water also provided valuable information about nearby movement. The exact importance of each sense varied among species depending on lifestyle and habitat. Teeth provide many clues about ancient predators. Fossil teeth often survive better than softer body parts because they consist of hard materials. Sharp, curved teeth usually indicate meat eating. Flat teeth often suggest plant eating. Serrated edges helped slice flesh. Thick teeth resisted breaking when biting struggling prey. Scientists study microscopic wear marks on fossil teeth to understand feeding habits in greater detail. Bite marks preserved on fossil bones also reveal predator behavior. Some bones show deep punctures matching the teeth of known hunters. Others display healing, showing prey survived attacks before recovering. Occasionally, fossils preserve evidence of scavenging when predators fed on already dead animals. Every mark adds information about ancient ecosystems and animal interactions. Footprints preserved in ancient mud provide another valuable source of knowledge. These fossil tracks reveal walking speed, body posture, and movement direction. Sometimes several sets of tracks appear together, suggesting predators followed prey across soft ground. Other trackways show animals moving through riverbanks, floodplains, or shallow water. Even without bones, footprints allow scientists to reconstruct moments from lives lived hundreds of millions of years ago. Coprolites, which are fossilized droppings, also help scientists understand ancient predators. These fossils sometimes contain fragments of bone, scales or teeth from animals that had been eaten. Careful examination identifies prey species and reveals hunting habits. Coprolites provide direct evidence of diet that complements information gained from skeletons and teeth. Predators influenced the evolution of prey species. Animals facing constant danger developed better defenses over many generations. Some grew larger bodies, thicker skin, stronger armor, or protective spikes. Others improved speed, awareness, or hiding behavior. Every improvement in predators encouraged new changes among prey, creating ongoing evolutionary change throughout ancient ecosystems. Climate strongly affected predator success. Wet periods expanded forests and rivers, increasing available habitats. Dry periods reduced water supplies and forced animals into smaller areas where predators found concentrated prey. Seasonal changes influenced breeding, migration, and food availability. Predators capable of adjusting to changing conditions often survived longer than those requiring specialized environments. Volcanic activity also influenced ancient life. Large eruptions released gases and ash that changed climate and affected plant growth. Reduced vegetation lowered food supplies for herbivores, which then affected predators. Entire food chains depended on healthy plant communities. Environmental disturbances therefore reached every level of ancient ecosystems. Disease and parasites probably affected ancient predators just as they affect modern animals. Although fossil evidence remains limited, ancient ecosystems certainly included microscopic organisms capable of causing illness. Weak or injured predators faced greater difficulty hunting successfully. Healthy individuals likely enjoyed better survival and greater breeding success. Young predators experienced many challenges while growing. Hatchlings and newborn animals were vulnerable to larger hunters. Parents may have protected young in some species, although evidence varies. Those surviving early life gradually learned hunting skills through experience. As bodies grew stronger, young predators became increasingly capable of catching larger prey. Growth rates differed greatly among species. Some predators reached maturity quickly, allowing rapid reproduction. Others required many years before becoming adults. Bone studies reveal growth patterns by examining internal structures preserved within fossils. These studies provide important information about life history and development. Color patterns of ancient predators remain mostly unknown because soft tissues rarely fossilize. Some exceptional fossils preserve traces of pigments, offering limited clues for certain later animals. Many earlier predators likely possessed colors, helping them remain unnoticed within their environments, communicate with members of their species, or regulate body temperature. But exact appearances remain uncertain. Brains also evolved over time. Skull cavities reveal approximate brain size and shape. Some later predators possessed larger regions related to smell, vision, or movement control. Better coordination improved hunting ability and allowed more complex behavior. Although ancient brains remained simpler than those of many modern mammals and birds, steady changes occurred across millions of years. Energy needs shaped predator behavior. Large hunters required substantial amounts of food. Successful hunts may have been separated by long periods without eating. Strong digestive systems allowed efficient use of each meal. Smaller predators often hunted more frequently because their bodies stored less energy. Every species balanced activity with available food supplies. Scavenging formed another important survival strategy. Even powerful predators likely fed on dead animals when opportunities appeared. Finding an already dead animal required less energy than hunting healthy prey. Fossil evidence from tooth marks suggests many ancient predators combined active hunting with scavenging depending on circumstances. Water remained essential for nearly all land predators. Rivers, lakes and wetlands attracted prey-seeking water, making these places valuable hunting grounds. During droughts, many animals gathered around remaining water sources, increasing hunting opportunities, but also increasing competition among predators. The rise and fall of different predator groups shows how life continually changed before dinosaurs became dominant. Synapsids ruled for long stretches of time before many disappeared during the Great Extinction. Archosaurs expanded afterward and filled many empty ecological roles. Large amphibians remained successful in freshwater environments, while sharks and other marine hunters continued ruling ancient seas. Each group contributed to the long history of life that unfolded before the first large predatory dinosaurs eventually spread across the continents. The first archosaurs appeared during a very important time in the history of Earth. Their arrival happened after one of the greatest disasters that life had ever faced. Before they became common, the planet had gone through the largest known mass extinction. Many kinds of animals and plants disappeared forever. Oceans lost a huge number of living things, and life on land also suffered greatly. Forests became smaller in many places, food chains were broken, and many habitats were left almost empty. The world that remained was very different from the one that had existed before. Many groups that had once ruled the land became rare or disappeared completely. This created new opportunities for the animals that survived. Among these survivors were the early relatives of the archosaurs. Over time, these animals slowly changed, developed new features, and gave rise to the first true archosaurs. The word archosaur means ruling reptile. Scientists use this name for a large group of reptiles that later included crocodiles, dinosaurs, pterosaurs, and birds. At the beginning of their history, however, archosaurs were small and not very well known. They did not immediately become the dominant animals on land. They shared the world with many other reptiles, amphibians, and the remaining synapsids, which were distant relatives of mammals. Early archosaurs were only one group among many, trying to survive in a recovering world. Their success came slowly through millions of years as they adapted to changing environments and developed features that helped them survive. The earliest archosaurs lived during the Triassic period. This period began after the Great Extinction at the end of the Permian period. Earth was still recovering from the enormous loss of life. Many ecosystems were simple because so many species had disappeared. New forests slowly spread across the land, rivers changed their paths, and fresh groups of plants became established. These growing ecosystems provided food and shelter for many kinds of animals. Small reptiles found insects, fish, and other small creatures to eat. Larger animals hunted these smaller reptiles. Every living thing had to compete for food, water, and safe places to rest and reproduce. During this time, almost all of Earth's land was joined together in one giant supercontinent called Pangaea. This huge landmass stretched across much of the planet. Because it was so large, many inland areas were far from the cooling influence of the oceans. The climate in these places was often very hot during the day and much cooler at night. Rainfall was not evenly spread across the land. Some regions had long dry seasons, while others received more regular rain. Rivers sometimes dried up and later filled again after storms. Lakes appeared and disappeared as the climate changed. Animals that could survive these changing conditions had a better chance of continuing their family line. Early archosaurs lived in these difficult environments. They needed bodies that could handle dry conditions and long journeys in search of food and water. Their skin helped reduce water loss. Their eggs had protective shells that allowed them to reproduce away from water, unlike many amphibians that still depended on ponds and streams for breeding. This freedom allowed archosaurs to spread into many different habitats across the land. One important feature of early archosaurs was the way their legs were attached to their bodies. Their legs gradually became positioned more directly beneath them, rather than spreading widely to the sides. This body plan helped many of them move more efficiently across land. It also supported longer periods of walking and running without using as much energy. Better movement allowed them to search for food over larger areas, escape danger more effectively, and explore new habitats. Another important feature involved their ankles. Scientists often study the ankle bones of ancient reptiles, because these bones reveal how different animals moved. Early archosaurs developed ankle structures that allowed stronger and more stable movement. Different groups later developed different kinds of ankles depending on their way of life. Some became better suited for fast running, while others became more suited for slower movement with greater strength. These changes played an important role in the later success of many archosaur groups. The skulls of early archosaurs also showed important features. Openings behind the eye sockets made the skull lighter, while still allowing strong muscles to attach. Powerful jaw muscles gave many species a stronger bite. This helped meat-eating archosaurs catch prey and allowed plant-eating species to process different kinds of vegetation. These skull features remained important throughout the later history of the group. The teeth of early archosaurs also changed over time. Many species had teeth that were set deeply into sockets, instead of being attached directly to the jaw surface. This arrangement made the teeth stronger and less likely to become loose while feeding. Teeth could better withstand the forces produced when biting into food. Different species later developed different tooth shapes depending on their diets. Some had sharp teeth for eating meat, while others developed teeth better suited for feeding on plants. Breathing also became more efficient in some early archosaurs. Scientists continue to study exactly how their breathing systems worked, but fossil evidence suggests that improvements in breathing played an important role in their success. Better movement of air through the lungs allowed more oxygen to reach the body. This supported greater activity and endurance. Active animals could search larger areas for food, escape predators more successfully, and care for their young more effectively. The early archosaurs were not all the same size or shape. Some remained quite small throughout their lives. Others gradually grew much larger. Body size depended on available food, local conditions, and the needs of each species. Small archosaurs could hide more easily among rocks, fallen branches, and low plants. Larger forms could hunt bigger prey or defend themselves against some predators. Over many generations, natural selection favored different body sizes in different environments. The early Triassic world still contained many dangerous animals. Large amphibians lived in rivers and lakes. Surviving synapsids continued to occupy many habitats. Other reptiles also became common. Competition for food remained strong. Every animal had to find its own place within the growing ecosystems. Some species specialized in eating insects. Others hunted fish along riverbanks. Some fed on plants, seeds, or soft vegetation. Different feeding habits reduced direct competition and allowed many groups to exist at the same time. As millions of years passed, the climate continued to change. Dry conditions often returned across large parts of Pangaea. Dust storms may have been common in some regions. Seasonal rainfall affected rivers and lakes. Plants that could survive dry weather spread across wide areas. Ferns, seed ferns, conifers, cycads, and other early seed plants formed forests and open woodlands. These plants supported growing populations of plant-eating animals, which in turn supported predators. The first archosaurs benefited from these expanding food webs. As plant life recovered, more insects became available. Larger plant-eating reptiles also increased in number. Meat-eating archosaurs found new prey. Plant-eating archosaurs found expanding sources of vegetation. This growing variety of food supported greater diversity among archosaurs themselves. Scientists learn about these animals mainly through fossils. Fossils include bones, teeth, footprints, eggs, nests, and even marks left by skin in rare cases. Most fossils form when dead animals become buried by mud, sand, volcanic ash, or other sediments before scavengers, and weather completely destroy the remains. Over long periods of time, minerals replace the original bone material, creating stone fossils. These fossils preserve valuable information about ancient life. Many early archosaur fossils are incomplete because the animals died in environments where preservation was difficult. Rivers often scattered bones before burial. Scavengers separated skeletons. Floods carried remains over long distances. Pressure from layers of rock later crushed many fossils. Even so, paleontologists have recovered enough material from different parts of the world to build a clearer picture of early archosaur evolution. Fossils discovered in South America, Africa, Europe, North America, Asia, and other regions show that archosaurs spread widely across Pangaea. Since all the continents were connected, animals could move across enormous distances over many generations. Populations gradually became separated by rivers, mountains, deserts, or changing climates. These separated populations slowly developed different features as evolution continued. Some of the earliest known archosaur relatives already showed several important characteristics before true archosaurs appeared. These animals provide important clues about how the group evolved. Their skeletons display gradual changes rather than sudden transformation. Features of the skull, hips, legs, and ankles slowly changed through many generations. Evolution worked through countless small changes that accumulated over long periods of time. The process of natural selection acted continuously. Individuals born with useful traits often survived long enough to reproduce. Their offspring inherited many of these helpful features. Over very long periods, entire populations gradually changed. This process did not follow a fixed direction or plan. It depended on environmental conditions, available food, disease, predators, and many other factors affecting survival and reproduction. The early archosaurs occupied many ecological roles. Some hunted insects, others captured fish along streams. Small meat-eaters chased reptiles and amphibians. Plant-eaters browsed on leaves, shoots, and seeds. Omnivorous species probably ate both plants and animals, depending on what food was available. Flexible diets helped some species survive changing conditions. Many early archosaurs probably laid eggs in carefully selected places. Sandy riverbanks, loose soil, or areas covered with plant material may have provided suitable nesting locations. Parents likely buried eggs to protect them from drying out and from predators. Scientists continue to study how much parental care early archosaurs provided after the young hatched. Modern crocodiles and birds show different forms of parental care, suggesting that some level of care may have existed early in archosaur history. Young archosaurs faced many dangers. Small predators hunted hatchlings. Floods could destroy nests. Dry weather threatened developing eggs. Finding food was difficult. For young animals with limited experience, only a small number survived long enough to become adults. Those that did survive contributed to future generations. Growth rates varied among different species. Some early archosaurs probably reached adulthood relatively quickly, while others required more time. Bone studies allow scientists to estimate growth by examining microscopic structures within fossilized bones. Growth rings and patterns of blood vessel development provide clues about age and growth speed. These studies suggest that many archosaurs grew actively during favorable seasons. The heart and circulation of early archosaurs cannot be observed directly because soft tissues rarely become fossilized. However, scientists study living crocodiles and birds to better understand how ancient archosaurs may have functioned. Care must always be taken because living animals have continued evolving for millions of years. Even so, shared features provide valuable clues about ancient biology. The senses of early archosaurs were important for survival. Good eyesight helped detect food and danger. Hearing allowed animals to notice approaching predators or potential mates. Smell may have played an important role in locating food or recognizing members of the same species. Brain cavities preserved inside fossil skulls allow scientists to estimate the size and arrangement of different brain regions. Communication among early archosaurs probably involved body movements, sounds, scents, and visual displays. Animals often need ways to attract mates, defend territories, warn rivals, or care for their young. Although direct evidence is limited, many living reptiles, birds, and crocodilians display such behaviors, suggesting that at least some forms of communication existed early in archosaur evolution. Disease and injury were also part of life. Fossils sometimes preserve broken bones that later healed. Bite marks appear on some skeletons, showing attacks by predators or fights between members of the same species. Bone infections and other diseases occasionally left visible marks on fossil skeletons. These discoveries provide evidence that ancient animals faced many of the same biological challenges seen in living animals today. The changing climate influenced every part of archosaur life. Long dry periods affected water supplies and plant growth. Wet seasons allowed rivers to expand and forests to spread. Temperature changes influenced breeding, feeding, and movement. Animals capable of adjusting to seasonal changes often survived better than those with narrow environmental requirements. Volcanic activity continued in some parts of Pangaea. Volcanoes released gases and ash into the atmosphere. Local eruptions destroyed habitats, while also creating new landscapes over time. Fresh volcanic soils later supported new plant growth. Earthquakes, floods, and shifting river systems constantly reshaped the land. Early archosaurs had to live within these changing environments. Competition remained an important force throughout the Triassic period. No single group immediately dominated all habitats. Many reptiles evolved alongside the early archosaurs. Different species succeeded in different environments, depending on available food, climate, and local conditions. Some groups later disappeared while others expanded into new regions. One important branch of archosaurs eventually gave rise to crocodile relatives. Another branch eventually produced the ancestors of dinosaurs and pterosaurs. At the time when these branches first separated, the differences between them were relatively small. Over millions of years, however, each lineage developed its own unique features. Crocodile relatives often adapted to different hunting methods and body forms, while dinosaur ancestors gradually developed characteristics that later defined dinosaurs. The ancestors of dinosaurs were initially small animals. They lived alongside many other reptiles without dominating the land. Their eventual success came much later. During the earliest stages of archosaur history, no one group controlled all ecosystems. Diversity remained high, with many unrelated animals sharing the landscape. Pterosaurs, which later became the first vertebrates capable of powered flight, also belonged within the archosaur family. Their flying abilities developed long after the earliest archosaurs had already become established. Early archosaurs themselves remained land animals. The evolution of flight required many additional changes, involving the skeleton, muscles, lungs, and skin. Birds also belong within the archosaur family through their dinosaur ancestors. This means that the story of birds began with these early archosaurs living during the Triassic period. Although birds would not appear until much later, the earliest foundations of their evolutionary history were already present within these ancient reptiles. The success of archosaurs depended on many interacting factors rather than a single special feature. Efficient movement, improved breathing, strong jaws, protective eggs, flexible diets, and the ability to survive changing climates all contributed to their survival. Different species emphasize different combinations of these traits depending on their environments. Trackways preserved in ancient mud provide another valuable source of information. Fossil footprints show how animals walked, how fast they moved, and whether they traveled alone or in groups. Some trackways preserve the paths of several individuals moving in the same direction. Others record interactions between predators and prey. These footprints often preserve behavior that bones alone cannot reveal. Desert regions also supported archosaurs that adapted to dry conditions. These animals likely traveled long distances between water sources. They may have been active during cooler parts of the day to reduce heat stress. Sheltering in shade or burrows probably helped smaller species survive the hottest conditions. Forested regions offered different opportunities. Dense vegetation provided hiding places for small animals and nesting sites, protected from some predators. Fallen logs, leaf litter, and thick plant cover supported insects and other small prey. Plant-eating species fed on leaves, shoots, seeds, and reproductive structures produced by ancient plants. The recovery of Earth's ecosystems after the Great Extinction took millions of years. Every generation of plants and animals slowly rebuilt the complex networks of life. Early archosaurs became an important part of this rebuilding process. They filled ecological roles left empty by extinct species, while also creating new interactions with the plants and animals around them. As archosaurs spread into different habitats, isolated populations experienced different environmental pressures. Natural selection acted differently in forests, floodplains, deserts, and coastal regions. These differences gradually produced new species with specialized bodies and behaviors. Evolution continued steadily across countless generations. The Permian and Triassic periods were two important parts of Earth's long history. They existed many millions of years before humans appeared. During these times, the land, the seas, and the skies were filled with living things that looked very different from the plants and animals that exist today. Many of these ancient forms of life disappeared forever, leaving behind only fossils that help scientists understand the distant past. These fossils tell the story of worlds that no longer exist. Rocks buried deep beneath the ground preserve the remains of ancient forests, rivers, deserts, oceans, and the creatures that lived in them. Every fossil found in these rocks adds another piece to the history of life on Earth. The Permian period began about 299 million years ago and ended about 252 million years ago. It was the final period of the Paleozoic era. During this long stretch of time, Earth's continents were joined together into one giant landmass called Pangaea. This enormous continent stretched across much of the planet and changed the way wind, rain, rivers, and seasons worked. Since so much land was connected, many areas far from the coast became very dry. Rain often fell near the edges of the continent, while the center experienced long dry seasons. Large deserts formed across many regions, and only certain plants and animals could survive there. The oceans surrounding Pangaea were also very different from those of today. A vast ocean known as Pangaea covered much of the planet. Another large body of water called the Paleotethys Ocean lay between different regions of the giant continent. These oceans supported many kinds of marine life, including creatures that had already existed for millions of years, as well as many new forms that appeared during the Permian. Coral reefs, shellfish, fish, sharks, and many kinds of tiny sea animals lived beneath the waves. The climate during the early part of the Permian was not the same everywhere. Some places were cool while others were warm. Over time, much of the world became hotter and drier. Forests that had once covered large areas slowly changed as rainfall became less dependable. Plants that needed large amounts of water became less common in many places. Plants that could survive dry conditions spread into new areas. These changes affected every animal that depended on plants for food or shelter. The forests of the Permian looked different from forests today. Many of the giant swamp plants that had been common during earlier periods became less widespread. Instead, seed plants became more successful. Early relatives of pine trees and other cone-bearing plants spread across many parts of the land. Seed ferns also became common. Although they had leaves that looked similar to true ferns, they produced seeds instead of spores. Seeds helped these plants survive in places where water was not always available for reproduction. The ground beneath these forests supported many kinds of insects. By the Permian, insects had already existed for a very long time. Beetles, dragonfly relatives, cockroach relatives, and many other groups lived among the leaves, tree trunks, and soil. Some insects fed on plants while others hunted smaller animals. Fossils show that insects had already developed many different ways of living. Their hard outer covering protected them from drying out, allowing them to survive in changing environments. The rivers of the Permian carried water across broad valleys and into large lakes and seas. Along these rivers lived many amphibians. Some were small enough to hide among plants, while others grew to impressive sizes. Many amphibians still depended on water to lay their eggs. Their young usually began life in water before moving onto land. This need for water limited where many amphibians could live, especially as dry conditions became more common across the giant continent. Reptiles gradually became more successful during the Permian because they were better suited to dry environments. Unlike amphibians, reptiles laid eggs with protective coverings that helped keep the developing young from drying out. Their skin also reduced water loss. These features allowed reptiles to spread into regions where amphibians struggled to survive. Over time, reptiles became one of the most important groups of land animals. Among the reptiles of the Permian were many unusual forms that have no close living relatives today. Some had large sail-like structures rising from their backs. Others had thick bodies, strong legs, or wide heads. Every species filled its own place within the ancient environment. Some fed on plants, while others hunted animals. Fossils found on different continents show that these reptiles spread across large parts of Pangaea. One of the best-known animals from the Permian was Dimetrodon. Although many people mistake it for a dinosaur, it lived long before the first dinosaurs appeared. Dimetrodon belonged to a group called synapsids. Synapsids are especially important because this group eventually gave rise to mammals. Dimetrodon had powerful jaws lined with sharp teeth. It hunted other animals and was one of the leading predators in many environments. The large sail on its back was supported by long bones extending from its backbone. Scientists continue to study exactly how this structure was used. Not all synapsids were meat-eaters. Many fed on plants. One important example was Edaphosaurus. It also had a sail on its back, although the shape and structure differed from that of Dimetrodon. Its teeth were better suited for eating vegetation. Large plant-eating animals helped shape the forests by feeding on leaves, stems, and other plant material. As millions of years passed, another group of synapsids, called therapsids, became more common. These animals showed several features that later became important in mammals. Many had legs positioned more directly beneath the body than earlier reptiles. Some had different kinds of teeth designed for cutting, tearing, or grinding food. Their jaws and skulls also changed over time. The therapsids eventually became one of the most successful groups of land animals during the later Permian. Many different therapsids lived across the giant continent. Some were small and hunted insects or small animals. Others reached large sizes and fed on plants. Powerful meat-eaters hunted the plant-eaters. Fossils found in places such as South Africa, Russia, China, and Brazil have helped scientists learn about the great variety of therapsids that lived during this period. Large plant-eating therapsids wandered across open landscapes searching for food. Their bodies were often heavy and supported by strong limbs. Some had broad chests and thick necks that helped support large heads. Their powerful jaws allowed them to process tough plant material. They played an important role in the ancient food chains of the Permian. The predators that hunted these plant-eaters had sharp teeth, strong muscles, and well-developed senses. Some had long skulls filled with pointed teeth. Others possessed enlarged canine teeth that helped capture prey. Fossils sometimes preserve bite marks on bones, giving scientists clues about hunting and feeding behavior. The skies above the Permian were filled mostly with insects. Birds had not yet evolved, and flying mammals would not appear until much later. Flying reptiles also had not yet developed. Dragonfly relatives, mayfly relatives, and many other insects moved through the air above forests, rivers, and lakes. Their wings came in many different shapes and sizes. The oceans of the Permian supported a wide variety of fish. Sharks had already been swimming through Earth's seas for hundreds of millions of years. Some sharks looked quite different from modern species. Bony fish also became increasingly diverse. They occupied rivers, lakes, shallow coastal waters, and deeper parts of the ocean. Many shell-bearing animals covered the sea floor. Brachiopods, clams, snails, ammonoids, and many other groups lived in huge numbers. Crinoids attached themselves to the sea floor and filtered tiny food particles from the water. Sponges and corals built reefs that provided homes for countless marine animals. Tiny organisms drifting in the oceans formed the base of many food chains. Plankton supported larger animals, which in turn fed even bigger predators. The health of these tiny organisms affected the entire marine ecosystem. Changes in ocean temperature, oxygen levels, and chemistry could influence countless species throughout the sea. The rocks formed during the Permian preserve evidence of ancient climates. Layers of sand show where deserts once existed. Coal deposits reveal the remains of ancient forests. Mudstone records quiet lakes and floodplains. Limestone formed in warm, shallow seas. By studying these rock layers, scientists rebuild the appearance of long-lost landscapes. Volcanoes were active in many parts of the world during the Permian. Some eruptions covered wide regions with lava and ash. These volcanic events sometimes changed local environments by burying forests, blocking rivers, and altering the atmosphere. Earthquakes also shaped the land as the giant continent slowly changed. Toward the end of the Permian, Earth experienced one of the greatest disasters in the history of life. Enormous volcanic eruptions occurred in what is now Siberia. These eruptions continued for a very long time and released massive amounts of lava, gases, and tiny particles into the atmosphere. The effects spread across the planet. The gases released by these eruptions changed the atmosphere and affected the climate. Temperatures rose in many regions. Rainfall patterns changed. Ocean chemistry became unstable. Large amounts of carbon dioxide entered the atmosphere. Other gases also affected living things. Many environments became difficult for plants and animals to survive. The oceans suffered greatly during this time. Warmer water held less oxygen, making it difficult for many sea animals to breathe. Some areas developed very low oxygen levels. Entire communities of marine life disappeared. Coral reefs collapsed. Many shell-bearing animals vanished forever. Countless species that had survived for millions of years became extinct. Life on land also faced enormous challenges. Forests died in many places. Soil became damaged, rivers changed, food supplies became limited. Plant-eating animals struggled to find enough food, while predators lost many of their prey. Entire ecosystems broke apart. The extinction at the end of the Permian eliminated most marine species and many land species. It remains the largest known mass extinction in Earth's history. Many branches of the Tree of Life ended completely. Others survived only because a small number of individuals managed to live through the changing conditions. After this enormous extinction, the Triassic period began about 252 million years ago. It marked the beginning of the Mesozoic era. Earth was now very different from the world that had existed only a short time earlier. Many environments had become empty because so many species had disappeared. Surviving plants and animals slowly spread into these vacant places. Recovery after the extinction did not happen quickly. It took millions of years for ecosystems to become stable again. New forests slowly appeared. Rivers supported growing populations of animals. Oceans gradually filled with new forms of marine life. Evolution continued as surviving groups changed over many generations. Pangaea still covered much of Earth's surface during the Triassic. The giant continent remained connected, although slow movements within Earth's crust gradually began creating cracks that would later separate the continents. These early changes were small at first, but became more important over millions of years. The climate during much of the Triassic remained warm. Large deserts still existed across the interior of Pangaea. Seasonal rainfall occurred in many places. Some regions experienced long dry periods, followed by heavy rains. Plants and animals had to adapt to these changing conditions. The forests of the Triassic contained many seed plants. Conifers became widespread. Seed ferns continued to exist. Ginkgo relatives also appeared in many regions. Cycads, which had thick trunks and large leaves, spread across warm environments. These plants provided food and shelter for many animals. The insects of the Triassic remained abundant. Beetles, flies, true bugs, and many other groups continued evolving. Pollinating insects had not yet formed the close relationships with flowering plants seen today because flowering plants had not yet evolved. Most insects fed on leaves, wood, dead plants, or other animals. The surviving synapsids continued living during the Triassic. Some remained important plant eaters and predators. Over time, however, another group known as archosaurs became increasingly successful. Archosaurs eventually produced crocodiles, dinosaurs, and flying reptiles. During the early Triassic, many different archosaurs began spreading across the land. Some archosaurs walked on 4 legs, while others moved on 2 legs. Their bodies showed many different shapes and sizes. Some became fast hunters, others fed mainly on plants. Strong legs, improved breathing systems, and efficient movement helped many archosaurs survive in changing environments. One famous Triassic predator was Postosuchus. This large archosaur hunted other animals and became one of the leading predators in some environments before dinosaurs rose to dominance. Its powerful jaws and strong body made it an effective hunter. Another important Triassic animal was Euparkeria. Although much smaller than many later archosaurs, it displayed features that scientists believe were important in the evolution of later groups. Its body structure suggests it could move quickly across the ground. During the Triassic, the earliest true dinosaurs appeared. These first dinosaurs were generally much smaller than the giant dinosaurs that lived later. They represented only a small part of the animal communities at first. Many other reptiles still dominated the land. Early dinosaurs slowly diversified over millions of years. One of the earliest known dinosaurs was Eoraptor. It lived during the later part of the Triassic. It was relatively small and likely fed on small animals and perhaps other food depending on what was available. Fossils of Eoraptor have provided valuable information about the earliest stages of dinosaur evolution. Herrerasaurus also lived during the Triassic. It was larger than many early dinosaurs and hunted other animals. Its sharp teeth and strong jaws made it an effective predator. Fossils found in South America have helped scientists understand how early meat-eating dinosaurs developed. Ichthyosaurs became among the best-known marine reptiles of the Triassic. They spent their lives in the sea and hunted fish and other marine animals. Their large eyes suggest that some species hunted in deep or dim water. Fossils sometimes preserve complete skeletons, allowing scientists to study their bodies in great detail. Nothosaurs lived along coastlines and shallow seas. They probably spent time both in water and on land. Their long bodies and webbed feet helped them swim, while their limbs still allowed movement on land. Placodonts developed broad teeth suited for crushing hard shells. They fed on shellfish living on the sea floor. Their strong jaws enabled them to break open the protective coverings of their prey. Ammonoids recovered after the Permian extinction and again became common in Triassic oceans. Their spiral shells came in many forms. They swam through ancient seas and served as food for larger predators. Because ammonoids evolved rapidly and spread widely, scientists often used their fossils to determine the age of rock layers. Coral reefs slowly returned during the Triassic, although they differed from those of earlier periods. Many marine communities rebuilt themselves over millions of years. Fish became increasingly diverse and sharks continued evolving into many different forms.